The word link selection simply means connection between two things. So whenever we say link connection, it simply means providing instruction to the compiler. I know this might be confusing, but let me explain in a way you will understand what link selection is all about in programming. Let me not use too much grammar. Whenever you hear link selection, it simply means header files. So the header files is what contains the function library that you are going to make use of while coding. For example, you want to use an LCD display in your code. In order to communicate, or in order for the LCD to work, you need a functions that helps to communicate with that LCD. So in order to use those functions in that your program, you need to include the header files. That header files is what contains all the whole functions of that LCD display. So once you include that functions in your program, whenever you call it in your code, your LCD will be able to respond to whatever instruction that you are giving to it. But if you not include those libraries and you call it in your code, the compiler, while compiling, the compiler will see it as error because it's not seeing anything that has a link to those functions that you mentioned in your code. That's why we call it link selection, because once you call it, the compiler will be able to know this is what you are referring to and this is the use of that function in that code. I know this might be confusing, but let me use this illustration to make you understand what I'm talking about. Now look at, I want to display a character on this LCD and also clear the character on the LCD. In order to do that, there is this functions that comes with LCD, that whenever you want to display a character on the LCD, you have to call the function to display those characters. And those function of that LCD is what we call lcd.print, which means you want to print a character, and lcd.clear, that means you want to clear everything displaying on the LCD. So in order to use these two functions that I made mention of, you have to include the files where this function is contained, which is the header file. So whenever I call this function lcd.print, and the file and the header file of this function is not included in the program, when compiling, the compiler will not see what, it will be confused where this function is coming from, and it won't communicate with the LCD. So in order for me to use these functions, these two functions that I made mention of, I have to include the file of it to the program, telling the program that see my resources. This file contains the resources I want to use in this program. That is the header file. So you are telling the compiler that here in this file, in this folder, anything that I made mention of, go to this folder and pick it out, link it with my code, pick it out so that I can communicate with whatever gadget that I want to attach to this program. That is what the link selection or the header file is all about. So once you include the header file, and in order to do that, we use what we call include, #include. So for you to include that header file, you have to use what we call #include. That #include means the there means you are tagging the file, and include means you are telling the compiler to include all the whole functions that is inside this file. Let me repeat it again. Just like in our normal social media, that whenever we want to tag somebody, we use # whatever we want to tag. That's how it's done in this program. So we want to tag this file, the LCD file, to our code. We use #. The # means we are tagging this file. Then we are telling the compiler, see this file, we want to make use of it. Then the include means you are telling the compiler that you are going to make use of the function inside this file. That is whenever you want to include any header file of any type of an external something that you want to use, whether the LCD, sensor, motor, anything that you want to make use of, you have to use #include to include the functions to communicate with those device that you want to make use of. That is where the link selection comes, because it's linking all the whole function.